The buzz of the convention center was palpable. Fans, young and old, clutching WWE memorabilia, eagerly lined up for a chance to meet their favorite superstars. At the center of it all was Becky Lynch, the man, whose booth was adorned with bold banners of her iconic smirk and championship titles. The energy was infectious, with chants of her name occasionally erupting from the crowd. Becky, meanwhile, prepared backstage, taking a moment to soak in the excitement. She adjusted her leather jacket, her confidence unwavering but her mind focused. These events always meant a lot to her, a chance to connect directly with the people who'd supported her rise. As the curtain opened and she stepped out, the room erupted into cheers. Becky waved, flashing her trademark grin. "Let's have some fun, shall we?" she called, her Irish accent cutting through the noise. The line began to move, and fans approached her with a mix of awe and excitement. Becky gave each person her full attention, taking pictures, signing belts, and chatting briefly. She relished these moments, knowing the impact a simple interaction could have. But as the line progressed, one figure stood out, a man with a stiff posture and a sour expression. His name was Greg, and he wasn't here to celebrate Becky. He was here to confront her. Greg stood in line, arms crossed, a scowl etched on his face. To him, Becky Lynch was emblematic of everything wrong with modern wrestling. He longed for the days of classic WWE, where, in his mind, men ruled the ring and women stayed in the background. Becky's meteoric rise, her cocky persona, and her self-appointed title of The Man rubbed him the wrong way. To Greg, her success was undeserved. He muttered under his breath as the line inched forward, his disdain palpable. "Overrated," he hissed, earning side-eyes from the fans around him. "She's all talk and no talent." Greg had rehearsed what he was going to say. In his mind, he'd envisioned Becky squirming under his pointed remarks, the crowd silenced by his truth. He was determined to tell her she didn't belong in the spotlight. As the line moved, Greg's anticipation grew, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. He clutched a poster for her to sign, though his intentions were far from kind. The moment arrived. Greg stepped forward, dropping the poster on the table. Becky glanced up, her smile unwavering as she greeted him warmly. "What's your name?" she asked. Greg, fueled by his simmering resentment, responded curtly, "Greg." What followed would be an interaction neither of them would forget. As Becky began to sign the poster, Greg seized his moment. "You're not as great as everyone thinks you are," he said, his voice cutting through the cheerful hum of the room. Conversations around them hushed as fans turned to watch. Becky paused, her marker hovering mid-signature. She looked up, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "Excuse me," she asked, her Irish lilt cool and measured. Greg smirked, mistaking her composed reaction for submission. "You act like you're the best, but you're just lucky. All this, the man stuff? It's a joke. You wouldn't have lasted 10 years ago." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, fans whispering their disbelief. Becky set the marker down, her posture shifting as she leaned back in her chair. She studied Greg for a moment, letting the tension build. "You think I'm lucky?" she said, her voice steady. Greg nodded, emboldened by her question. "Yeah. You're all hype. No skill." Becky's lips twitched into a faint smile, but her eyes burned with intensity. She stood, the chair scraping against the floor as she pushed it back. The crowd parted slightly as Becky stepped around the table to face Greg directly. "All right, Greg," Becky began, her voice rising just enough to command the room. "You think I'm lucky? Let's talk about luck." She gestured toward the fans surrounding them. "Luck didn't get me here. I wasn't handed this. I fought for it. Every single day." Her tone was calm, but carried the weight of conviction. Greg shifted uncomfortably, but Becky wasn't finished. "You think headlining WrestleMania was luck, breaking records, holding championships? You have no idea what it takes to do what I do." She stepped closer, her fiery gaze locked on Greg. "Luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and trust me, I've been preparing my whole life." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Becky raised a hand to quiet them. "Here's the thing, Greg," she continued. "You don't like me. That's fine. You don't think I deserve this? That's fine, too. But what gives you the right to tear me down? What have you done? What have you fought for? Greg opened his mouth to respond, but Becky cut him off. Or are you just standing here, throwing stones, because it's easier than building yourself up? The silence that followed was deafening. Becky's words hung in the air, resonating with the crowd. Greg's smirk faltered, his confidence crumbling under her scrutiny. Becky took a step back, her voice softening. You know, Greg, I hope one day you find something you're as passionate about as I am about this. And when you do, I hope you don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve it. She turned to the crowd, addressing them with the same passion. Being the man isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, proving you deserve to be here, and standing up to people who try to tear you down. The fans erupted into applause, chanting her name. Greg stood frozen, his face a mix of embarrassment and regret. Becky returned to the table, picking up her marker. Now, Greg, she said, her tone lighter. Do you still want me to sign this poster? He nodded silently, and she signed it with a flourish. Enjoy the show, she said, handing it back to him. As Greg walked away, the crowd cheered Becky's name. Videos of the interaction quickly spread online, with fans praising Becky's poise and powerful words. Greg, meanwhile, reflected on what she'd said. Her challenge to be better struck a chord, forcing him to confront his own insecurities. By the time the event ended, Becky had returned to her cheerful demeanor, engaging with fans as if nothing had happened. But the crowd buzzed with excitement, murmuring about the exchange with Greg. Unbeknownst to Becky, dozens of fans had captured the moment on their phones. Within hours, clips of the confrontation were circulating online, shared across social media platforms with captions like, Becky Lynch shuts down a hater, and the man shows why she's a legend. Greg's words, cruel and pointed, stood in stark contrast to Becky's passionate and inspiring response. Fans flooded the comments with praise for her resilience and eloquence. This is why she's my favorite, one fan wrote. She doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. Another commented, imagine thinking you could intimidate Becky Lynch. What a queen. The videos didn't just resonate with her fan base, they reached beyond the wrestling community. Becky's words about passion, hard work, and standing up to critics struck a chord with people from all walks of life. The hashtag number sign, Becky shuts him down, began trending, and news outlets picked up the story. It wasn't just a viral moment, it was a testament to Becky's influence and the power of her message. Greg couldn't escape the moment. As he scrolled through his social media feed, he saw his face, captured mid-smirk, plastered across countless posts. The comments weren't kind. People called him a coward, a bully, a symbol of outdated thinking. At first, Greg felt defensive. They don't know me, he muttered, slamming his phone down on the table. But as he replayed the interaction in his mind, Becky's words began to sink in. She hadn't just defended herself, she'd challenged him to reflect on his actions and his attitude. What had he fought for? Why did he feel the need to tear her down? Greg realized that his resentment toward Becky had less to do with her and more to do with his own frustrations. He'd been stuck in a dead-end job, his childhood dreams of success long forgotten. Seeing Becky thrive had stirred something in him. Not jealousy exactly, but a painful reminder of his own unfulfilled potential. That night, Greg watched the clip of their exchange again. This time, he listened, really listened, to Becky's words. By the end, he felt something unexpected. Gratitude. She hadn't humiliated him. She'd given him a wake-up call. Back in her hotel room, Becky sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone. She hadn't anticipated the interaction with Greg to blow up the way it had. Her notifications were flooded with messages of support, and clips of the moment had amassed millions of views. Becky smiled, but there was a tinge of sadness beneath her confidence. Confronting Greg had been necessary, but it had also reminded her of her own struggles. She thought back to her early days in wrestling, the grueling training sessions, the nights spent doubting herself, and the sacrifices she'd made to pursue her dream. Becky knew what it was like to face criticism, to have people tell her she didn't belong. That was why she couldn't let Greg's words go unchecked. She'd seen too many talented people give up, because they'd let the critics get to them. Becky put her phone down and stared at the ceiling. If I can change one person's mind, she thought, then it's worth it. She knew the interaction wasn't just about Greg. It was about everyone watching, everyone who'd ever been told they weren't good enough. She hoped her words had reached them too. A week after the event, Becky received an envelope at WWE headquarters. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Becky, I owe you an apology. When I came to the signing, I didn't come to celebrate you. I came to tear you down. I thought that by pointing out what I saw as your flaws, I'd prove something. But all I did was show my own insecurities. Your words made me realize something I'd been avoiding for a long time. I've been angry, not at you, but at myself. I've let my own dreams slip away, and instead of facing that, I projected my frustration onto you. You didn't have to respond the way you did. You could have ignored me or thrown me out, but instead you stood up for yourself with grace and strength. You didn't just defend yourself. You inspired me to take a hard look at my own life. Thank you for that. Sincerely, Greg. Becky read the letter twice, her chest tightening with emotion. She folded it carefully and placed it in her bag, a reminder that even small moments could have a big impact. Months later, Greg stood in a local wrestling gym, sweat dripping down his face as he completed a set of push-ups. Inspired by Becky's words, he'd decided to pursue a dream he'd abandoned years ago, becoming a wrestling trainer. It wasn't easy. He was out of shape and years behind where he wanted to be, but for the first time in a long time, Greg felt like he was moving forward. He kept Becky's words in mind every day. What have you fought for? The question had become his mantra, pushing him to work harder, to rebuild his life and to focus on what truly mattered. Meanwhile, Becky continued to shine as one of WWE's top superstars. During a live interview, a fan asked her about the viral moment with Greg. Becky smiled. You know, she said, standing up for yourself is important, but so is giving people a chance to grow. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is challenge them to be better. The story of Becky and Greg became a symbol of resilience and redemption. For Becky, it was a reminder of her purpose, not just to entertain, but to inspire. For Greg, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where he fought not against others, but for himself.